Galvin locked in, looking for the sign from her catcher. Lagerwell's really been hot at the plate. Hasn't missed anything in the last few weeks. Nothing seems to fool him. Galvin ready for the pitch. Takes a second to pause. Weird noise going on around here. She checks back in with her catcher. Seems ready to go. It's the same noise again. Looking around for the stadium, she shakes it off. She's ready to pitch. And the pitch. And that's far and deep. Forget that. Lagerwell points to the dugout, but he knows it was all him. Wait, is that a camera out there in center field?
Welcome to the Box Score. We've got a lot to get to today, including our own version of a private NFL workout and a sports court debate for a spot in the championship. But first, let's focus on the NCAA, the only company that legally gets away with not paying their employees. That's right, the NCAA is back in the news for all the wrong reasons once again. If you haven't been paying attention in the past few weeks, there was a new pay-to-play bill passed in California allowing student athletes to profit off their likeness. That legislation was actually announced on LeBron James' The Shop on HBO. And before I get into this whole thing, what kind of world do we live in now where LeBron James is announcing new laws? If I wanted a socially insensitive comment or a slice of cardboard pizza, then I'd look to LeBron, but not for laws. Anyway, that new bill in California has sparked a greater conversation that has always existed, but now may have some traction about whether or not student athletes should be compensated. And hey, believe it or not, I'm not here to make the case whether they should be paid or not. I don't want to spend minutes explaining why a vigorous activity that requires you to attend meetings, practices, and travel at games, which consequently affects what major you can take, the amount of time you have to study, and your ability to get a real job to pay for essentials like food that are not always readily available, should pay you. I'm not going to do that. Instead, let's talk about how the NCAA seems to have had their pouty face on since that's become a hot topic national discussion in the recent weeks. And you might wonder why one would think that. And with that curiosity, I would point you in the direction of the suspension of James Wiseman. Wiseman is the 7-1 University of Memphis center and projected #1 overall pick in this upcoming NBA draft. In the summer of 2017, Wiseman, who lived in Nashville at the time, began to play for NBA legend Penny Hardaway's AAU team in Memphis. They bonded. Wiseman was, good at the basketball thing. And the Wiseman family decided to move to Memphis and enroll James at the high school Hardaway was coaching at the time. The Wisemans were not wealthy, so the former NBA star gave them $11,500 to help out with the moving costs. Then, Hardaway got the head coaching job at Memphis, and here we are. So you might be wondering, how in the hell is the NCAA ruling Wiseman indefinitely ineligible for something that was completely legal and also, maybe more importantly, when he was in high school? Another fair point, one can argue, is why are you punishing the then 16-year-old Wiseman for his parents taking money from an NBA legend looking to further their son's career? Answer me this. Who in their right mind wouldn't do that? But even now, Hardaway sits comfortably every week knowing he gets to go out there and continue to do his job. Meanwhile, Wiseman is the one who is suffering, unable to showcase his talent and actually make some money in the NBA, so he won't have to borrow money anymore. What's really sad on top of all of this is some of the reactions from congressmen and current college football coaches on the state of college athletics, especially that of Dabo Swinney, the head coach of Clemson, who has 2 national titles and makes $9.3 million a year, said he'd consider quitting college football if players got paid. Okay? Not only does he sound like an angry grandpa, but I think he fundamentally misunderstands why people watch college football. Fans tune in their TVs to a Clemson game for Trevor Lawrence, not to watch Dabo Swinney clap his hands on the sidelines. And you could say, well, he's the reason Clemson's so good. Or the reason Clemson is so good is because they're an ACC powerhouse that has an inside track at the best 5-star high school recruits in the country every year. So Dabo, leave. Anyone else, leave. People watch for the players. Well, actually, unless you're this man.
Where can this team go from here, Coach?
We'll see. We've got to go beat Ole Miss next week. We'll take it one game at a time.
Congratulations.
Go Tigers.
I watch LSU football exclusively for Coach O, and that's it. It's as simple as this. If I wanted a sandwich, I'd have Michael get it for me. Would I get in trouble? No, I wouldn't. Michael gets me my sandwiches all the time. If Joe Burrow wanted a burger while he was in a meeting and a friend bought it for him, he'd be risking his collegiate career. At the end of the day, the NCAA is upset over the California bill, and they're dealing with it the same way a 6-year-old deals with being put in timeout. And if you don't see it, I encourage you to open your eyes and watch the helicopter parenting that is currently going on. All right, we're now going to shift over to our box score combine. We figured if Colin Kaepernick could have an impromptu workout for NFL teams, well, so could we. Here's how it went.
Earlier this month, Colin Kaepernick made headlines with a public workout in an attempt to get back on an NFL team. Today, I will be making headlines with my own workout for the box score. Here we go.
Bigger. How you figure? Yeah. Hey, yo, peep the style and the way the cap sweater. The number one question is can the feds get it? I got vendettas and dice games against ass betters and wheels and drop jetters.
3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Or fist fights and lame scuffles. Pillowcase to your face, make the shell muffle. Shoot your daughter in the calf muscle. A tussle, nickel plated. Sprinkle coke on the floor, make it drug related. Most hated.
Can't fade it. While y'all punk Willie, I run up and stunt silly. Scared so you sent your little mans to come kill me. But on the contrary, I passed the Mac Millie, squeezed off on him. Left the paramedics breathing soft on him. What's your name?
Who shot your mouth ties like Sinatra? Peruvians tried to do me in. I ain't paid them yet. Trying to push 700s, they ain't made them yet. Rolex and bracelets is frostbit. Rings tunes is on the way, call me igloo stick.
Where you from? Brooklyn, going out for all. Bossy, you don't stop. Best style, you won't stop. What? Jay-Z, Big Smalls, and this shit get your drawers. Brooklyn, represent y'all, hit your balls.
I
Crazy,
heard you.
big
That was my elbow.
Chump your JV. Jay-Z.
Nigga, baby, my bed style flows malicious, delicious. All 3 wishes made my road to riches. From 62 gym stars, my mom's dishes. Gram chopping, police van docking, bees at my doors knocking.
Keep rockin', no more mister. Nice guy, twist your ish. Back with the pistol, blazing, hot like Cajun. Hotter than even holding work at the days in. With New York plates outside, get a body there. Okay, right.
I can't stick it.
Get steeper, here comes the Grim Reaper. Frank White, need the keys to your innkeeper.
That's right.
Chill, homie, the bitch in the Shoney's told me you're holding more
It's hard
drugs
to
than the
stick.
pharmacy. You ain't harming me, so pardon me. Pass the safe before I blaze the place. And hit 6 shots just in case.
I didn't know you about him. 14 minutes. Which is not my real The methods are skewed. Good tape method. Look at. I just jumped like 5 inches high.
Yeah. For 9-6, the only MC with a flu. Yeah, I rhyme sick. I be what you're trying to do. Made a fortune off Peru. Extradite, China white, hair on. With his sleeves like short sleeves, I bear wrong. Stay out away from here on.
Clear.
Gone.
Me and Gutter had 2 spots. The 2 for $5 hits, the blue tops. Gotta go, Coolio, mean it's getting too hot. If Faye had twins, she probably have 2 pots.
Time to separate the pros from the cons, the platinum from the bronze, that butter soft issue from that leather on the fawns, a S1 diamond from my I-class dome, a Chardon sipper from a rosé.
261.
No, sipping on.
Cristal forever. Play the crib when it's make weather. The mafia keep cannons in their mouth Buchanans. Usually Quattro Cinco, the shell sink slow.
My
Toss
strides
me up,
aren't
mad
as long,
slugs
my
through
legs
your
are lots more,
water.
and I'm much faster than what the time is. Don't believe everything you read. I'm faster than the time. Okay? Let's get this out of my face.
You don't stop. Red Hook. That's right. You won't stop. Jay-Z and Biggie Smalls, shit you draw. Where you from? Brooklyn, going out.
I'm gonna go again.
Yo, you don't stop.
Yeah, ready?
Clear heads. You won't stop.
Yeah.
Set. Hut. Set. Hut.
Time to separate the pros from the cons, the platinum from the bronze, that butter soda shit from that leather on the fawns, a S1 diamond from my
Oh my God.
Sean Dawn sipping from a rose, hugging on. Brook non, sipping on.
Cristal forever. Play the crib when it's mink weather. The mafia keep cannons in they mop cannons. Usually quattro cinco, shell sink slow, tossing ya. Man slugs through your Nautica. I want it.
Ready?
Set. Hut.
Jay-Z and Biggie Smalls, it's Biggie G Draw. Where you from? Brooklyn, going out to all.
The biggest theme for the workout for me tonight was transparency. I wanted these cameras here. I wanted all these people here to see that I'm ready to play. And I've been ready to play for 3 years. I've been denied for 3 years. I'm ready to be signed and put in the game today. Ryan Ribeiro is scared. What are you running from, Ryan?
Okay, we're back as I'm now joined by Jacqueline Galvin and Oliver Chamberlain to discuss the Logan Paul KSI YouTube boxing match. Guys, first things first, I'm not sure anyone in their wildest imagination even thought that this could happen, but it did. So what was your takeaway from this fight?
Well, they did fight, I believe it was like 13 months ago, last summer, and this time they actually used real boxing gloves and they didn't have the head protectors. So that was pretty interesting. But personally, I don't think this was a good move on behalf of boxing in general. I mean, putting two YouTube influencers, if you could call them that, up at the Staples Center and having them sell out the Staples, like that just, it's so stupid. Like, it's just inherently stupid that this entire fight happened in the first place because of YouTuber beef. Like, that's so stupid.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, I agree that it is kind of stupid, but personally I think it was good for boxing because we take all these young kids who are following KSI and Logan Paul and we put their eyes on boxing. You know, it gives it a lot more viewers and possibly, you know, they'll start buying pay-per-views to, you know, Pacquiao and the likes.
Right.
So.
But this isn't real boxing. This was just two people punching each other in the face. Like, that's not, it wasn't really.
I mean, you could argue that's what any boxing match is.
Yes, you could argue that, but this was just an embarrassment to boxing in my eyes.
I mean, I'm not going to say it was good boxing, but it brought more eyes to the sport, which is what they've needed for a long time.
Right. Now, also, $30K was put on Logan Paul by someone for this fight. Could either of you imagine putting $30K on Logan Paul? No. Yeah. There was also a little bit of controversy, though, that went with this whole thing, with the finish, specifically the result. And Paul wants to appeal the decision. Do you guys, can you see this, first of all, going in his favor?
No.
At all? No.
No, I don't think so. Just because you can't hit someone in the back of the head when they're, like, on the ground. That's against the rules. It's clearly against the rules. So that made sense to get deducted the 2 points there. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really expect to have one of the best boxing referees in California to see a back of the head hit while somebody's on the ground and not deduct 2 points. It was very clear. I don't think there was a mistake there.
Right. So there's rumors swirling around that there might be, you know, part 2 to this whole thing, a rematch.
Part 3.
Right, part 3, you're right. So a rematch. First of all, can you guys see it happening? And if it does happen, will the result change?
I don't think that it's going to happen because after the fight, KSI essentially said, I'm done, and told Logan Paul that he should go and do MMA fighting, which I think would be extremely interesting to watch him get his butt kicked by someone.
Almost on every platform he's trying to get his butt kicked.
Seriously. So, and there has been some MMA backlash. I know Darren Till was tweeting about it when the whole boxing match was happening. So if Darren Till and Logan Paul could get into a ring together, Darren Till contesting for a title in this year, I would love that because Logan Paul would just get his butt kicked. That would just be hilarious. But something like that would be interesting, to say the least.
Yeah, I'm not sure it'll happen, just also based off of what KSI said. And you know, really the fight went best for both of them, as it probably could have. Obviously, Logan Paul caught up in a little bit of controversy, but he didn't get embarrassed, and neither did KSI, and neither of them were hurt, so that went pretty well. But, you know, they made millions and millions of dollars. I mean, I don't see anybody, especially them backing down from, another couple million. So.
All right. But the result won't change?
Yeah, no, I don't. Well, actually, it's possible because I thought that Logan was a lot more controlled.
Yeah.
KSI throughout the whole fight was swinging for the fences, and you can tell in those last couple rounds. But Logan was just a little too timid. I think if he had gone at him in those last 2 rounds, he would have taken him out. Just based off of the fatigue that you saw from KSI. So.
Yeah. All right, guys. So thanks for joining me. Appreciate the insight as always. When we come back, we'll hear from Hannah Brewitt and Michael Lagerwell on who their top 5 free agents are in this MLB winter, and Avikar Glath and Jacqueline right here will square off in a sports court for a spot in the championship. You won't want to miss it. We'll be right back.
All right, coming back in 10 seconds. Ready, camera 1. Camera 1, you need to wide shot of the entire thing, and in 3, 2, 1, take talent cue.
Welcome back to Emerson College. Emerson
Camera
trails
4, you need a shot of the players coming across the court.
10 seconds left. Emerson trails by 1 point. As
Camera 2, close up on the person shooting.
Thanks, Joe. With 10 seconds left, Emerson is hoping to pull away and score this big one.
Camera 1, gonna close up, follow them over.
Emerson trails WPI 10 points. 10 seconds left. Emerson trails by 1 point as the team finishes their timeout.
Camera 1, close up on number 33.
Thanks, Joe. With 10 seconds left, Emerson is hoping to pull away.
Follow the ball, follow the ball.
Hey, we're your roomies, your homies, your new living best.
We live here too.
Thanks. Liz! Do you have any idea what time it is?
It's time.
7. 7? It would mean a lot to me if you guys watch.
Welcome back to the Box Score. Yes, the MLB season just ended, but it's never too early to be thinking about next year. Take it from me as a Mets fan. I'm thinking about next year 2 weeks into April. Here to break down top 5 free agents in this year's class are Hannah Brewitt and Michael Lagerwell in our segment we call Top 5. Guys, take it away.
Thanks, Ryan. Well, one thing Mikey and I can definitely agree on is that turtlenecks and chains make a great fashion combo. One thing we might disagree on, however, is the number of pitchers that should actually make this top 5 list. With that, I'll start with my number 5 in Madison Bumgarner. You talk about a guy who's been there, he's won 3 World Series championships, and at 30, he's still definitely got a few good years left in him.
At my number 5, I have the Japanese phenom Yoshihiro Setsugo. The past 4 years in the Japanese league, he's averaged over 30 home runs and over 900 OPS. I think he can come into the MLB and make an instant impact.
At my number 4, I have Anthony Rendon. Now, he's the only position player I have on this list, and for that reason, I think he's just going to be not one of those guys that makes those big numbers. That being said, he had a great season this year with the Nationals. He had a great run in the World Series, and he does a lot of great things that are very versatile and could be an asset to virtually any team.
At my number 4, I have Josh Donaldson. And even though he's getting up there in age, last year he still produced at the plate with almost 40 home runs and in the field with an almost 2 defensive WAR.
At number 3, I have Zach Wheeler. This one's for you, Ryan. I mean, Wheeler on the Mets, he's kind of set up for failure at that point. However, I think he's a great pitcher with a lot of potential, and he would be higher on this list if there weren't 2 other fantastic pitchers in this free agent class.
At my number 3, I have the reigning World Series MVP, Steven Strasburg. I mean, if you watch the World Series, this speaks for itself. He's an amazing pitcher coming off an amazing year where he finished 3rd in the Cy Young, or top 5 in the Cy Young voting.
Well, and at my number 2, Mikey, you said it, I also have Steven Strasburg. Now, this was a guy that he was one of the massive keys to the Nationals World Series run. At least going into the series, I did not think that the Nationals would be able to compete with the starting lineup of the Astros. Strasburg was one of those guys that really ran it home for them and played a key factor as the World Series MVP in that championship.
At my number 2, I have Garrett Cole. Now, Cole had one of the most dominant stretches we've ever seen from a pitcher, Bob Gibson-esque. and follow that up with finishing second in the Cy Young and having a spectacular postseason as well. He'll be one of the highest paid players this offseason.
Well, Mikey, you said it. Garrett Cole, that's my number one. I think he's going to take the crown from David Price with the highest salary for a pitcher, and I think he definitely deserves it. I mean, this is a guy that had, like you said, one of the best postseason runs, especially. He had a great season. I think that a team like the Yankees, who's willing to spend big bucks, would really benefit from a player like Cole.
At my coveted number one spot, I have Anthony Rendon. He's really broken out in his career at this point, and I think his potential is going up. I don't think he's going to decline anytime soon, especially coming off back-to-back years leading the NL in doubles and getting MVP votes. I just think he's the player with the most upside this offseason.
Well, that's our top 5. We'll toss it back to you, Ryan.
Welcome to Sports Court. This week we've got a spot in the championship to face off against Michael Lagerwell on the line. The topic at hand today, we'll discuss the current state of the college football playoff. As it stands, the Alabama Crimson Tide sit on the outside looking in. The case today is if they win their final 2 regular season games, should they be among the 4 teams placed in the playoff picture? Here to debate in favor of the Crimson Tide is Avi Kargloff, and making the case against the team is Jacqueline Galvin. Before we begin, we all know Tua Tagovailoa's season is now over due to a hip injury. But Alabama is still number 5, and for lack of a better phrase, rolling. So, with that in mind, we will begin with opening statements and start with the prosecution. Jacqueline, go ahead.
When you think of college football, you think of the University of Alabama. Since the installation of the college football playoffs in 2014, Alabama has been a consistent player with 5 berths and 2 national championships. But this year, things changed. Last weekend, Alabama fell to Louisiana State University 46-41 and fell in the rankings to 5th place behind LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia. But then disaster struck Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Beloved quarterback Tua Tagovailoa went down with a season-ending hip injury at the end of the first half of their game versus Mississippi State. They were up 35-7 at the time, and whether or not Tua should have been playing is an entirely different debate. But know this, Alabama's stock just plummeted without their Heisman-caliber quarterback. They lost to the only team they played that is ranked anywhere close to them, and their best player can't play for the rest of the year. Putting them into the college football playoff shows a bias towards a school and is unfair to cusp schools like Georgia and Oregon.
The college football playoff is reserved for the 4 best teams in college football, and if they finish their season by winning out, the Alabama Crimson Tide will have cemented themselves as being worthy of being one of those teams. Their play this entire season has showed them to be what they have typically been under Nick Saban, a team that is good enough to win it all. There is no doubt that with wins in their last 2 games, Alabama should be in the playoff.
All right, short and sweet. Now that both opening statements have been made, the floor is open for debate.
All right, so I'm just going to pose the question. Do you think without Tua, Alabama can beat the likes of LSU, who they couldn't even beat with Tua, Ohio State, Clemson, or Georgia?
Well, Jacqueline, that's a good question, but I don't think that's as relevant to the debate as you might think, because this debate is about if Alabama wins those 2 games, should they be in? And if Alabama wins the Iron Bowl going into Auburn, they will have won that game with a backup quarterback. And you mentioned that loss to LSU. Tua was not completely healthy in that game. Everyone saw it. He was not completely ready to play in that game. In addition to that, that loss to Alabama's loss to LSU is easily the best loss, so to speak, out of any of the teams that are on the bubble for making the college playoff. They lost by 5 points to right now what is the best ranked team in college football.
Yeah, but who else has Alabama played this season? They haven't played a single ranked team besides LSU, and LSU is the only team that they've lost to. Georgia has won against Auburn, who's currently ranked 16th, Florida, who's currently ranked 10, and Notre Dame, who's ranked 15th. LSU has also beaten Florida and Auburn, as well as Alabama. And Ohio State has shut out Cincinnati and 14 Wisconsin.
You know what Georgia also did? Georgia lost at home to South Carolina.
In overtime.
And
anything can happen in overtime.
I think
everyone knows this. Anything can happen in overtime.
The BCS was an outdated system, and the college football playoff was instituted so we could actually more accurately look at the surroundings. And the surroundings of that Georgia game, that was not the first game of the season. Georgia, when they lost, they were 5-0. They had beaten Notre Dame, which is a good win. They came into that game completely unfocused. They were at home against South Carolina, and it doesn't help the fact that Alabama played that exact same team and blew them out by 24, because that's the Alabama we know and expect. Alabama does not need
but Tua was
to
there.
win. Alabama doesn't need to go into the SEC championship to even make it. They did it in 2018. They didn't go to the SEC. They passed Ohio State, which had won the Big Ten, and UCF, which was undefeated. There's history behind this. Alabama has literally done this before, and they actually beat Clemson and then Georgia for the national championship. They've done it before.
Why would the College Football Committee, why would they put a Tua-less Alabama into a spot that could easily be occupied by Georgia or Oregon or even Utah?
Again, part of the reason is it's Alabama. You know what you're getting. Their loss to LSU, they ended up losing by 5 points. They were down by 20 points at halftime, and twice in the fourth quarter, with 5.5 minutes left and with under 90 seconds left, they made it a 5-point game. They came all the way back and made it a close game. They could have won in the end of it. Georgia, they were not disciplined in any way, shape, or form. They thought they had it in the bag. The top 4 teams in the country, you're not supposed to lose to those kind of teams. You're not supposed to lose at home to an in-conference rival like South Carolina. Alabama doesn't lose those games, and that's why they've proven, not just this year, but over the last half decade.
Alabama's strength of schedule was ranked like in the 50s in the preseason poll.
And they've beaten the crap out of everyone they've played. Not even they haven't had a single close game with the exception of LSU. And
yeah,
again,
but that's the
the
only
number
ranked
one
team.
That's the number one
they
team
weren't
in the
number
country.
one at the time.
Because Ohio State was number one. Ohio State's not losing to anyone this year. Sorry to break it to you. But LSU is now the number 1 ranked team in the country, and that's their only loss. They did it with a non-healthy Tua Tagovailoa.
But now they can't do it with Tua.
They cheered him when they were announcing that he was playing, because there was no certainty that he was going to play. And he played well in that game against an LSU team that was one of the best teams in the country. They hung 41 points on him. And in addition to that, if they go on and win against Auburn, Georgia beat Auburn, but Alabama's win will be more impressive because they will have done it with a backup quarterback.
The only way that Alabama could possibly make it into the college football playoffs, obviously if they win out, but they win by more than 2 or 3 touchdowns versus Auburn.
And
I don't think that they can. Not this season, not with a backup quarterback. With Tua, that's a guarantee.
But that's not this
There's
debate.
no guarantee with Alabama.
This debate is if they win their final 2 games. So we are working under the assumption that they have beaten Auburn.
But
and
we aren't working under the assumption.
They will have done that with a backup quarterback, and that is inherently more impressive than what Georgia did. Even though Georgia won, they didn't win by a lot, and winning with a backup quarterback will solidify Alabama already. They're already ahead of all these other conference leaders. There was a new rankings that was out today, and they were still ahead of all these other teams.
Because they don't play anyone of caliber. They've played
but
2
they're beating
ranked
the crap
teams.
out of everyone that they do.
Let's move to the closing statements. You guys are getting loud. This time we'll start with Avi. Go for it.
The quality of their play and of their one loss gives Alabama one of the strongest resumes in college football. They are so good that they do not need to even win their conference for them to be seen as a top 4 team. Closing out the season with a backup quarterback would make their run to the playoff look even more impressive than it already does. The results don't lie. Alabama should win out and make the college football playoff.
If a school or a team has a history of success, it doesn't mean that they should be handed a chance to compete for a national title. They have to earn it and compete for it. Alabama's strength of schedule is extremely weak in comparison to the other 5 or so contenders for a national championship. They lost to LSU, the only team that is ranked even relatively close to them that they played. And unfortunately, Tua also had a season-ending hip surgery. If you're going to tell me that a Tua-less Alabama can beat the likes of LSU, Ohio State, Clemson, and Georgia, you need to get your eyes checked. The cards aren't falling into place for this Alabama team, and there are other teams that have earned this nomination more than Alabama has this year. If Alabama does get this nomination, it just shows an extreme bias from the committee, and Alabama won't make it to the national championship, leaving a cusp team to wonder what could have been if they were only afforded the opportunity to compete.
Okay, so when we come back, our jury will give their decision on who will be moving on to the championship. Don't move your seat. We'll be back in 90 seconds. We're back here at the box score and ready to hear from our jury on their decision. Jury number one, how'd you guys find?
Well, you know, Avi's not going to be happy about this one, but we have to hand it to Jacqueline. Your closing argument was really strong, and it really brought us home for us.
I'm shocked. I'm surprised. Okay. Well, congrats, Jacqueline. You're be going. I'm sorry. I'm surprised. You're going to be going up against Michael in the championship. I'm rude. Whatever. Now to close things out here on the box score, we're going to kick it over to the Hot Take Factory and Brenna Shelton as she gives us her thoughts on what the consequences should be for Myles Garrett after he used Mason Rudolph's helmet like a sledgehammer. And before we go over there, it's been a rough last 10 seconds for Avi, but I need him to know that I did not approve of this. Brown slander is not allowed on this show. It's not allowed, Avi.
That's right.
I didn't approve this, but we're going to have to, the show's got to go on, right? So we're going to go over there. Brenna, take it away.
On Thursday night, the Pittsburgh Steelers played against the Cleveland Browns in a lackluster game that ended with a score of 21-7 in favor of the Browns. The result of the game, however, was not what had America buzzing. In the final seconds of the game, a fight broke out between the Cleveland's defensive end, Myles Garrett, and Pittsburgh quarterback, Mason Rudolph. During the fight, Garrett rips off the helmet of Rudolph and proceeds to slam it into the quarterback's head. In any other situation, this would be considered assault with a weapon, and in my opinion, Myles Garrett should be charged as such. For too long, players have been allowed to act irrationally with no legal repercussions from the NFL because society has deemed that the atmosphere of sport allows violent behavior. In the legal world, criminal assault is broken down into two parts: infliction of physical harm and that the victim did not consent to that harm. When Mason Rudolph stepped onto the field, he agreed to the physical harm that could possibly come as a part of the game. Football is a contact sport, and every player understands that risk when becoming a player. With that being said, the line needs to be drawn when physical harm goes beyond the boundaries of football. He never consented to being beat with a weapon such as a helmet. I'm not saying to prosecute every defensive end that's called with roughing the passer, but when the players make a conscious effort to attempt serious injury to another player, the NFL needs to do more than just giving the player a suspension. The reason Garrett needs to be charged is because what he did exceeds the boundary of the game. He acted in an act of passion to inflict someone that did not consent. That's assault. And I understand the passion that comes with playing, especially with rival teams, but the NFL needs to consider that the long-time damage that may come from players throwing temper tantrums and acting out needs to be stopped. Robert Cantu, medical director of the Concussion Legacy Foundation, told USA Today that Garrett very easily could have given Rudolph a brain fracture, which in turn could have killed him. Just because the worst-case scenario of post-fight injury hasn't happened yet doesn't mean it won't. The NFL needs to step in and press charges before these player-on-player assaults go any further.
Whew. Couldn't imagine Myles Garrett facing legal action for this. That's why we call it the Hot Take Factory. All right. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have for you on this rendition of the box score. Next time you see us, it'll be our grand season finale you won't want to miss out on. To stay updated on that and all our episodes and all these people, follow us on Facebook and Instagram at @theboxscore_EIV. For everyone here at The Box Score, I'm Ryan Ribeiro. Thanks for watching. See you next time.